the Teresa Lusk Show, and I am super excited to bring you my next guest, Chuck Branch. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Hey, Chuck is running for Texas State House District 61. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're excited, Chuck, right?
Yes, we are.
This is a good time for you. You're running the campaign, and this is a time of shifting.
Yes.
Right? There are a lot of moving pieces when it comes to the political world, elected officials. As my viewers know, there's a lot of mess out there going on right
There
now.
is.
But I think the mess is necessary because it shows what's really going on.
Yes.
And
yes.
so people like yourself,
Mhm.
you say, you know what? I feel like I'm called to do this. I'm supposed to do this. So you are representing Collin County, District 61.
That's correct.
But you were a councilman.
Yes, I was.
So tell us a little bit about yourself so that we can get our county, our district excited about who Chuck Branch is.
Okay, very well, very good. So I've been here in McKinney for about 20 years, Collin County total about 24 years. I've been very active in the community. I've been on the Chamber of Commerce for 7 years. I mentored students for 6 years in the Partners in Education program, and then I was on the Economic Development Board and served on the City Council. City Council was a great experience for me. I've learned quite a bit, but also I focused a lot on the values. I focused on bringing more business here to help us lower property taxes, fought against increasing taxes, fought against forced annexation, which the city tried to get underneath the radar and get approved before it expired in December of 2017. And those are things I've always done, and I voted against apartments when we didn't need them, voted against other kinds of housing when we didn't need it. And so I always look at what was the value and what the votes are and then just compare it to what we were already doing.
Sure. Okay. So what is the drive for this? Because there are other people that may be running and could run for this, but you seem very determined with a very specific vision in mind. What is it that you're really after in this election?
Yeah, that's a great question. Being here for so long, you have a sense of pride in where you're from, and it's the qualities, it's the standards. You know that we're one of the fastest growing counties in the nation, and we've got to make sure that we protect those values. It's very important. We've got to protect our votes. We've got to protect our children. We've got to make sure that our children are not exposed to some things that are just unethical and inappropriate. And we're finding that it's possible, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to shut that down as we start to grow. We bring more people in, coming in from other states and other areas that find that acceptable. And we can't do it.
Right.
And we're not going to do it.
Well, you said we've got to protect our votes. So that's a big deal right now, right? Voter fraud. Tell us a little bit about what did we find in Collin County and fraud cases. Is that real?
Yes,
real?
Absolutely. So fraud cases, fortunately, Collin County's been very consistent on how they've done the voter maintenance, I'll call it that. However, in more of our liberal areas, such as your Dallas, your Harris County, and Travis and Bexar County, you've had those towns where you've had the voter fraud. Right now, we have over 500 voter fraud cases. And that's not just voter fraud. In other words, that's not just 500 people that voted ineligibly. That means those are cases where there could have been harvesting, it could have been ballot box stuffing, it could have been
in Collin County or
not in Collin County,
okay.
Fortunately, and so right now we're at a point where the AG is not allowed to prosecute any of those people because the legislation doesn't allow him to. He was overturned by the appellate court, which is more liberal. It's a Soros-driven group, and so what they've done is they shut him down and said, well, that's out of your purview. You're not allowed to prosecute in these cases. And the DAs in those areas are supposed to do the prosecution, but they're not doing it. So we've got to come up with some legislation. The Senate put legislation into the House and said, here we go, we passed it, and they let it die in a committee.
Wow.
So we're stuck through all the way till 25 till we can come into legislation again to be able to have a legitimate and accurate election process.
Well, that's very important. I'm glad that that's one of the priorities for yourself. We definitely want to protect, the voting integrity. I think it's important, regardless of where you're from, etc. We need to do that. It's important for the future of everybody, every party,
Yes.
by the way, every
Absolutely.
party.
Yes, for everybody.
Every
right?
party, because
Regardless.
just because we disagree with the other party, or doesn't mean that their voting protection isn't important. So
Absolutely.
that's a big
Absolutely.
deal. There's something that you mentioned. You said, but this was before the recording, and we talked about one of the things that's really important to you is getting Democrats out of chairs.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this, because I think we're seeing this across
Yes.
the state.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's across the state, but it's not the United States. United States, they don't allow Democrats to chair any committees. I don't know if you knew that or not, but that's the case. It's unfortunate. And so what happens is, the reason why they do is because they need to get their speaker and the speaker they want. So they have to play ball with them. They have to give them certain committees, and they have to negotiate the chair, the speaker's seat. The challenge that we're having is with the voter integrity, those areas where they have the voter fraud, the Democrats aren't going to be supportive of putting any kind of legislation that makes anything integrity isn't really something that's important to them, right?
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you're focusing on that for sure. We have border issues, and
Yes.
this is a pretty big deal. A pretty big deal. I have a friend who talks about this all the time. He talks about the history of why it's happening and things of that nature. And those are things that aren't really being discussed. But regardless of the why, we have a problem right now.
Yes.
It's a big problem. It's affecting Texans. I had the sheriff here the other day,
Nice.
and we talked about fentanyl, how that was a problem.
Yes, huge.
So what do you foresee? I mean, clearly the illegal immigration, but tell us a little bit about why border security is so important and why you are really, running with that.
Absolutely. So you're right. He talked about fentanyl. Many people don't realize that we have 3 times the school-age deaths than what we had just a couple of years ago. And it's from the fentanyl coming across the border. The sex trafficking.
Yeah.
It's horrible, but these are the things that are coming across this border. We have the ability to do it. We've got the ways and the means in order to do it. They gave $5 billion to the border and to build a wall. Well, that was already eaten up. No, they're not going to tell you that. That was already eaten up. I've got a friend who's there on the border, and he fights against a lot of the immigration coming across, and he shared this with me and said, hey, you realize that $5 billion is already spent up. It's gone.
Wow.
And we don't have it. And there is a way to shut it down, but it's going to take the ways it's going to take actually shutting down the border. But again, we're fighting with the Democrats again. And the Democrats have these chairs where they can water down these bills, or they can eliminate the bills. And not only that, but they also have a parliamentarian in there who can also call a point of order to also kill or eliminate bills while we're there.
Wow.
So we're playing too much with the Democrats. The Democrats don't want to have the border secure because they're okay with the illegal immigration coming in. They get the votes, and they figure, hey, we'll just give them money. That's not what we want here in Texas.
Sure.
And I've talked to people at the doors, and they're really concerned about that because they understand that their kids, they can get any kind of residue from the fentanyl.
Yes.
It could cause death for them.
Yeah, well, that was one of the other topics we were talking
Yes.
about. Chuck, I try to be, I'm very conservative, but I still try to be fair.
Absolutely.
What responsibility do conservatives, Republicans have regarding this issue? Because this has been going on for a while, right? And clearly it's maximized under the Biden administration, there's no doubt.
Yes.
But what could have been done that our elected officials could really take note, hear the voices of the community saying, you've been elected for a while, you've been able to do something about it. Is there anything that a Republican or conservative can do or could do to help fix this problem?
Yes, absolutely. So number one, we've got to make sure we get conservatives in there. We've got to get a conservative speaker, someone who will actually fight for the people and the voters. They've already spoken. The voters have already spoken. They said securing the border is a huge priority for them. And I know that they've blown it off. They've even mentioned it, and they said, they're the Republican Party of Texas, they're irresponsible and they're irrelevant. And so that when you have that, those are the voices of the people as a whole, out there, and they represent different areas. I was on the SREC, and so I always went to my constituents within that area to make sure that I knew before I went in to put priorities before the legislation. This is what we needed to do.
Yeah.
And so that's the experience I have whenever I go into this and I see this. And it's unfortunate that they just completely have disregard for it. It's like a fraternity right now.
Right.
Or a sorority, whichever one you want to call
Sure,
it.
yeah.
And it's just irresponsible.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad we're addressing it, because I think it's important. You said, talk to the constituents and find out what is it that they're concerned about.
Absolutely.
I've actually heard one elected official, now I've been around a few, but I've heard one say that, or really be super active in acquiring this information, meeting with the community very consistently.
Good.
And I have really appreciated that. Now, that doesn't mean everybody agrees with them or what have you, but they did seem to really care about the people. And in this season, Chuck, we need elected officials who actually care about the people. Truly, there's too many career politicians.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
We don't need that. We want people who really care about people. So what do you feel you can do for your district in this season? Like, what sets you apart?
So I'll tell you one of the things I did when I was on council. I went and I knocked on 2,000 doors.
Wow.
And then I knocked on another 2,000 because I had 6 opponents in my race, so I had a runoff after that. And the purpose of going and knocking on doors is so vital, because I may have a belief in the way things should be, but when I go out and I talk with the people, that puts a conviction behind that belief.
That's right.
So number one, you have to get out there to the voters. You have to talk to them. You have to understand exactly what's important to them. You have to ask detailed questions. And then you have to talk about how to make that happen and how to make that work. And that's, they're going to tell you, hey, this is important. You'll find that many of them are not that over demanding. And they're not what people, some people would like to say, they're not high maintenance, right? They're because a lot of people look at them as inconveniences. And when I was on council, we would have these 3-hour meetings, especially forced annexation, where it was 3 hours that it was a public hearing. And I would see some of my colleagues, they get all frustrated and mad at them and everything else. And what people don't understand is these people are a little scared about what's going on. You need to listen to them. And you need to understand that these people have vital information. They have the experiences I may not have. So I've got to learn to listen to them, because they can relate better to a situation than I may be able to.
That's right. This is kind of a question of campaign, and this
okay.
I just think it'd be a fun question. What is the response like when you go knocking on all these doors? Is everybody kind? How do you get a person of the opposing view to talk to you? I want to hear that.
You don't. So you just go up to their door and you say, "Hey, my name's Chuck Branch. I'm here just come to find out what's important to you guys." And so some of them, they're stumped a little bit, and then they let me know that they're supporting somebody else. Say, "Okay, well, I'll tell you what, just let me be your second choice if that's the case." And I don't try to push on them or anything else. It doesn't really matter, right? Because I'm not going to change somebody's voice or their decision.
Right.
That's up to them.
Right.
And I honestly don't have time to deal with that, to try to turn somebody over. I got to go to the next door and next door and next door and just keep going. And this is more of an offensive game anyway, to where I don't have time to worry about what other people say, or I get attacked, and that's just the way it is.
Right. Well, you got to be ready for that if you're going to be in politics, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it helps you get to the yeses, right?
Yeah,
Helps
exactly.
you get to the yeses.
That's a good point.
Yes.
Yeah. So your no means that you're closer to a yes,
that's
right?
That's right. So, okay, let's shift gears just a little bit. You're a businessman.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about your background and how have you seen the business wisdom that you've acquired, how is that applying now to your run? Yeah, so
I got my degree in accounting. I went to UT Dallas. It was a harder school, a lot harder than I thought. My kids make fun of me. They give me crap all the time. They're saying, "Dad, you couldn't get there today based on the grades you had." And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter.
Wow.
I got there. I graduated, right?
I get it.
So, but we have fun with each other as a family. And so the reason why I went for accounting is because it teaches me follow the numbers. And you can always, or follow the money. You can always follow the money to find out where it is. And so what I've done is I've taken that. I'm in commercial real estate, and I've learned how to know and understand more about the process, and I know how to make people money, right?
That's good.
Through,
We like that.
you know, whether we change, you know, if we change and turn over properties and so on. And it also taught me how to negotiate. And sometimes I have to negotiate. So I look at it, I've got different customers. So my customers are my investors. My customer is also the city that I may have to deal with. And then also their staff. Because I've got to show respect and honor to each one of those areas, right? And sometimes I have to call my investors off the ledge and say, hey, guys, listen, I know this is what you want, but the goal is we need to build a partnership and a relationship. We have to develop trust with these cities so they know that, hey, next time something comes up, we know they're going to do the right thing.
That's good.
And that's why it's always important. And I learned that early on.
Well, those are the principles to a campaign, connecting with people, right?
Yes.
Really, you are, and you look beyond it, and you're like, well, these are customers, even if they're not going to vote for you.
Absolutely.
Because even if they're on the opposite party, really, because you're still representing them.
Absolutely.
So that's very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've had people tell me, hey, Chuck, you and I don't see eye to eye on views, but I know I can trust you because I know where you stand on things. I know you're not going to change. So if you tell me something, I know that's the direction you're going to head. Now, one of the things I do try to do is, even if let's say I'm on the losing end of a situation, we'll go back to the forced annexation. I knew that I was on the losing end of that deal, but I tried to compromise for the people to say, hey, listen, y'all may be voting this way as my colleagues, but at least give them this. At least, make it easier, more palatable, and not as damaging to them, or make it feel like they really lost. And I don't know who they are. I didn't know if they were Republicans or Democrats, but he still deserved the same fair treatment that everybody else does.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Absolutely. I agree with that. So you're a man of faith.
Yes.
How does that affect your decisions, and did that have anything to do with your run?
Yes. It makes things simple. It really does, because you have to look at a word that you hear and things that you hear, and you have to compare it to God's word and say, hey, does that sound right? And just same thing with people, for people who can't relate to the Lord, is I don't think people look at people's character enough to be able to really judge who they are. And in this situation, with the Lord, I know, because I've got to study it all the time, because I got to keep getting better. And so it helps me to move forward, get in prayer. And before I ran, I really didn't want to run. I wasn't interested. People were calling me, and there were some things that really interested me and concerned me all at the same time. I don't just jump into something. And my wife and I had made a decision that I wasn't getting in politics much, or if any more, or is way down the road.
Oh, goodness.
And so I went to her and I said, all right, here's the deal. I said, I don't really want to do this, but what would you think if I got involved in this race? And I was hoping she'd just say, no way, you're out, because that was always the answer. She goes, if the Lord's calling you to do it, then do it.
Good for her.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to pray about it and make sure. And so I prayed about it, and then he told me, he said, you're in.
Wow.
No, I didn't want it, but hey, we're in now. And so we have to bring honor to him by working hard and making sure we give the best of our ability into that situation.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that we're going to win. It doesn't mean that he's given us the victory, as long as he gets the victory.
That's right. That's good.
Right.
So, how does that affect people? Because you're a Christian man.
Yes.
But you're serving people of all faiths.
Yes.
And even people who don't have a faith.
Yes.
How do you handle that?
I try to find relatable topics. For instance, I've got a lot of friends who are from India. They've got a different religion and different faith than I have, and I'm able to communicate with them. They know where I stand. They know I'm a Christian, and they are not. They don't believe in gun laws, or not in favor of the gun laws, which is okay. But education and family values is a big thing for them. Yeah. The transgender movement is a big deal for them. Making sure they just want their kids to have good education. Yeah. They don't care about all the other stuff. They don't want the social. They don't want sexualization of their kids and everything else. Hey, I just want to know that I've got a safe environment my kids are going into.
That's right.
And that's what's important. And that's what we have to do as even Christians. And we're called to do that. Don't judge people. We've just got to be that kind of individual that can go into a situation, find out, okay, we're not going to agree 100%. There's 10 things here. We may agree to 5 of them. What are those 5 that we can agree on?
That's right. That's good. So as we wrap up here, Chuck, we've had such a great conversation. You know, we've covered quite a few things here. What would you say to people that are going to go vote at just the right time? What are some things you want to tell the constituents? Why Chuck Branch? What should make them go and press that button and say, he's the man?
Okay, that's good. That's a great question. So when you look at where we stand on principles and values, I'm the top one that has the values that more align with most of the people here in this area. Okay. Number 1. Number 2, I've shown it on my record. I've voted against property tax increases. I focused on how do we make that happen? How can we get the taxes down? And I know that we need a permanent source for that. I've also voted against apartments because that can drain resources from the cities, but we can bring in businesses. And that's a very important factor. We know that we need to work on bringing city infrastructure in. And these are things for business people that they look at and they say, okay, that makes sense. We've got a fast growing county. How do we bring in the roadways to break down so we don't have so much traffic and all that? So those are things that people can look at my voting record. And I told you, for instance, with the apartment situation, I walked, when I knocked on those doors, my constituents said, no more. We're done. We don't want any more apartments. We don't want any more low-income housing. And it's not because there was anything wrong with low-income housing. McKinney already made up 52% of all of it in the whole county. And you had other cities, larger cities, that made up about 1, 2, and 10%. And so it was something that we needed to focus on and make sure that we preserve the values. And people know that looking at my record. And they know it. And I will test anybody. Go look at my record. See how I voted. If I told you I did something, you'll know I did it. And that's what people know from me.
That's good. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting us have all of that. What do you do for fun?
For fun, not much.
Oh,
No. I do. You know, I go to the gym when I can. I read, spend a lot of time with family, and just enjoy. I've got a 9-year-old son, and he keeps me active, energetic. My girls, they're much older. They're 22, 20, and 19. And so they're kind of doing their own thing, but he needs that attention. He needs dad. And so it's fun. And we'll go do goofy stuff. We may go to the arcade, or we'll go, play outside or different activities. And of course, my wife and I will go hang out sometimes, date when we have time, if we have time.
Good.
So
that's
good.
important.
Yes.
That's important. So Chuck, where can people find you? Because people want to know about you.
That's great. Well, they can call me. My phone number is 469-569-1044. That's my personal cell phone. I open that up to anybody. It's on my business cards. It's on my materials, on my website. Or you can go to chuck4texas.com. That's chuck4texas.com.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Chuck. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, good.
My friends, there you have it. There's Chuck Branch, and go check him out. You want to find out more about him, especially if you're in the district. And even if you're not, listen, a lot of the things that he shared, those are nuggets. Even the principles of the business, like how do you apply that? To me, those stir me up to go, okay, this is good. You can apply that to life. You can apply that to not just politics or business, but just how you do life in general.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. It's very important.
Yeah.
We've got to have them together.
Yeah.
Right. They've got to be similar.
That's right. Well, there you have it, my friends. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thank you.